Respected US constitutional expert, Harvard Law School professor and attorney Alan Dershowitz is no right-winger, nor is he a big fan of Donald Trump. But he, like many of us, is concerned about the inappropriate use of the criminal justice system by politicians to go after their opponents. As I said, we're seeing it too much in Australia now, and it's a very, very dark trend. Dershowitz highlighted his concerns in a recent book called Get Trump. He spoke to Forbes magazine's Diane Brady about his reaction to the Durham report this week.
Well, it's Get Trump too. Everything I said in Get Trump, that there's a double standard, that there are efforts by good people to do bad things in order to prevent what they believe is an even worse harm to the country, namely the election of Donald Trump as president, is distorting the Constitution. It was the thesis of my book, Get Trump, and it's the central thesis of the Durham report. What the Durham report shows is that there was an absolute double standard, that they had far more evidence to go after Hillary Clinton, who I voted for and who's my friend, who I supported and who I contributed to. But the report says there was far more objective, verified intelligence to open up an investigation of Hillary Clinton than there was to open up an investigation of Donald Trump. But that people in the FBI and other agencies of government saw the evidence through the prism of bias against Trump and in favor of Clinton. And it wasn't only partisan bias. There were Republicans as well who were very concerned, and I understand why, very concerned that if Trump were elected, it would harm the national security of the United States. And so they were prepared to stretch the law, stretch the facts, stretch the Constitution, and do whatever it took to do what they believed was the right thing, namely make sure that Trump was not elected president.
Alan Dershowitz says the greatest danger to liberty lurks in people with good intentions bending the rules to get outcomes that they think are the right ones. Professor Dershowitz says the impeachment of Donald Trump by the Democrats was an example of this sort of dangerous setting of precedents that tear down the important conventions and ways of operating that keep our liberal democracies going.
What I think the Durham report shows is how important it is to have strict rules, objective, strict rules, because I don't think people are going to learn their lesson. You could have written the Durham report exactly about what District Attorney Bragg is now doing to Trump, making up a crime, making it up completely out of whole cloth. Never in the history of America has anybody ever been indicted for failure to disclose in a public record that he paid hush money to prevent his family, his voters, his business associates from learning about an illicit affair. It's never happened in history. They just made it up, created a crime. And that's, of course, what Durham found. There was no evidence of collusion with Russia. There was some evidence that Hillary Clinton plotted, or people in her campaign may have plotted to accuse Trump, according to the Durham report, to cover up her own problems with having an improper computer process in her home basement. Now, I don't know whether any of that's true or not, but it's a damning, damning report, and I hope everybody reads it. You know, already it's being dismissed, though, by the New York Times and other people on the ground. Well, it was Durham. What do you expect? He was appointed by Republicans. Well, what we expect is to read the evidence. Look at the evidence is pretty compelling.
US constitutional expert and former Harvard Law School professor Alan Dershowitz speaking with Forbes magazine this week. The Australian newspaper's Washington correspondent, Adam Crichton, meantime, wrote this week that for all the gravity of the Russia collusion hoax, the Durham report has been dismissed or ignored by much of the US mainstream media, some of whom won Pulitzer Prizes for validating it. The crime was assumed, but the evidence was never forthcoming. And the same institutions, more or less, suppressed it and dismissed the true story about Hunter Biden's laptop, which could have been devastating to Joe Biden's 2020 presidential campaign. Those who've been screaming loudest about misinformation and disinformation have ended up being the greatest purveyors of it. Whatever Trump's flaws and his later misdeeds, he didn't deserve this, and his supporters are right to be furious. If you enjoyed that content, there's lots more where that came from. The Other Side Australia is back every Tuesday and Friday on ADH TV and all good podcast platforms. It's your weekly short circuit summary of the best news commentary from Australia and abroad. Don't miss it.